Hey, it's Dr. John Terry, the Black Belt Leader. Welcome to the Black Belt Leadership Podcast, where each week I'm giving you tips, tools, insights, and resources to help you become a better version of who you are and what you do as you discover, develop, and deploy your own Black Belt leader within. Now, many of you know I have been a big fan of history all my life. Why? Because to me, history serves as a document of trial and error. It gives us a look at success and failure, and it reveals the very best and worst of humanity. Now, successful people study the lessons of history because it allows them to add the collective wisdom of the ages to their own. And in the process, it accelerates their personal growth and their professional development. Now, to me, history serves as an example of choices made and consequences experienced as a result of the choices that were made. And as the United States celebrates its 250th anniversary this year, I thought it would be interesting to revisit the events that led up to the Declaration of Independence, as there's some valuable, often overlooked lessons therein that you and I can apply to our lives. So let's revisit what I call the Declaration of the Founding Fathers, and I want to pose this question to you. What are you declaring to the world? So let me open and let me start this lesson with a question. How well do you know the backstory that led to the Declaration of Independence? Because as the United States begins to celebrate its 250th anniversary this year, I want to revisit this era in history that led to the Declaration, because there are some powerful lessons that are applicable to you and I today. Now, the unrest that actually led to the American Revolution and the Declaration of Independence began in 1763. Now, this was the conclusion of the 7 Years' War, also known as the French and Indian War. And it was shortly after that when England began to constrict colonial expansion and settlement west of the Appalachian Mountains. The Americans wanted to expand across this vast continent, but they were restricted by England from doing so. Shortly after that, Parliament in England passed the Stamp Act 2 years later, 1765. And this instituted the very first direct tax on the colonies. And then the Townshend Act that followed placed additional duties on essential goods. Now, what happened there? This led to boycotts, and it fueled the resentment of England by the American colonists. Now, I believe history points out that the tipping point that really brought about this move towards independence came in 1773, when colonists destroyed a massive shipment of British tea. Now, this was an act of defiance against what they called taxation without representation. Today, you and I know this as the Boston Tea Party. Now, the British responded by closing Boston Harbor, and they also suspended self-government in Massachusetts 1 year later in 1774. So this act really united the colonists in their opposition to the British Crown. Now, 1 year later, 1775, was what history calls the shot heard round the world. This marked the beginning of armed conflict. It happened with the battles of Lexington and Concord. This was the start of the Revolutionary War. But by the time the Declaration of Independence was adopted, July 4th, 1776, the American colonies and the British Parliament had been in a state of open military conflict for well over a year. So the Declaration formally announced the 13 colonies' formal severance from British rule. They cited grievances against King George III, and the Founding Fathers began to assert their own natural rights. Now, if you don't know the history behind the Declaration of Independence, there was a committee of 5 that was appointed by the Continental Congress, and they were commissioned to draft the document that would be the Declaration of Independence. Now, the 5 included John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Robert Livingston, Thomas Jefferson, and Roger Sherman. Now, Thomas Jefferson was tasked to draft the primary document, and then that primary document was then edited by the committee and then later on by the Continental Congress. The final text, all the edits and all of the other discussions led to a final text, and that was adopted July 4, 1776. But what you may not know is most of the delegates didn't sign the official parchment copy of the Declaration of Independence until August 2nd, 1776. Now, the Declaration of Independence established the United States as an independent nation that was influenced strongly by Judeo-Christian ideals. It also formally announced and formally launched the Revolutionary War. Now, this document declared that individual rights of every colonist were derived from a creator rather than from a monarch or from a state. This directly reflected the biblical ideas regarding human dignity and the sanctity of life. Now, the belief that all men were created equal, that too stems from the religious concept that all individuals are made in the image of God. And the final paragraph of the Declaration of Independence contains a firm reliance on the protection of a divine providence. And that demonstrated a collective belief in a God who intervenes in human affairs. Now, while the Declaration of Independence is not a theological document, the language of nature's God and that of a creator, that represented a synthesis of the Enlightenment rationalism and the traditional biblical theology that was common in the American colonies at this time in history. And it was with that declaration that things changed. Now, if you think about this Declaration of Independence, the document itself was characterized uniquely by its declarative style. It established universal principles as truth. You know, I love the statement, we hold these truths to be self-evident, because they went on in the Declaration of Independence to declare, to proclaim certain rights, the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These things, according to the declarers, was inherently obvious. It was unquestionable, and it was given to all men who were created equal. And when you think about this document, it is truly what we call it today. It is, and it was at that time, truly a Declaration of Independence. Now, I want you to pay close attention, because there is great power and there is great authority in a declaration, because a declaration has the authority of law. Now, if we go to the dictionary and we look up the word declaration, what does it say? The dictionary says a declaration is a formal, explicit, or official announcement, whether spoken or written, to make something known, such as a statement of truth, a proclamation, or, if it's written, a legal document. A declaration is the act of proclaiming, or it is a document that in writing embodies this verbal announcement. A declaration is the professing of a thing to be. It is a person or an event to be recognized, or it is the act of speaking, i.e. declaring something into existence. It is a statement, it is an announcement, it is a proclamation, it is an affirmation, or it is an assertion. A declaration is also the establishment of a position in explicit, formal, or emphatic manner. As a formal or declarative statement, think about this. A declaration can be used for a number of things. It can be used to acknowledge or to confirm the existence of specific facts. It can be used to profess or to avow a position, a belief, or an intent. A declaration can be a decree, a binding order, or a decision. A declaration can proclaim something loudly, clearly, or officially to the public. It can define or set the parameters of a relationship or a concept. It can establish a new entity, a new policy, or a new legal right. A declaration can attest to the truth, authenticity, or the correctness of a statement or a document. It can announce an event or a decision officially, and a declaration can promulgate a law, a rule, or a regulation. Now, what I find fascinating, when we go back in history, the word declaration comes from the Latin. And the word that we see, declaration, comes from declara. Now, the word declara means to make quite clear. I love it. To declare, to make quite clear. When we declare something, there can be no doubt, no question, no lack of clarity when something is declared. A declaration serves as a statement of claims or an affirmation of truth. And throughout human history, we've seen declarations of war, we've seen declarations of peace, declarations of surrender, of course, the Declaration of Independence, and a declaration of a state of emergency. Now, in the judicial system, we see a jury verdict as a declaration of the guilt or innocence of an individual. And throughout history, we have seen, and I like this, declarations of love professed in many ways. I mean, think about it. When the minister says, "I now pronounce you as husband and wife," that is a declaration. It is a truth announcing to the world that two individuals have joined together to become one in holy matrimony. Now, a declaration serves as an authoritative announcement. It serves as an official statement. So when you and I declare something, we declare anything, we're making an official statement. We are formally and publicly stating a fact or an intention. And when we declare something, we reveal something. We make something known to the world. Remember, there is great power and authority in a declaration. A declaration has the authority of law. Now, when we go back and think about our founding fathers, what happened when they wrote and signed the Declaration of Independence? They spoke a nation into existence. They declared in that moment their freedom from British rule and domination. Fast forward 250 years later, the United States of America is not only just surviving, it continues to thrive as the world's economic and military superpower. It continues to serve as a model of excellence to the rest of the world. So really, I guess the question is this. You maybe say, "John, great lesson on history, but how do I take the lesson of the Declaration of Independence and apply it to my life today?" Well, I'm glad you asked, because remember, there is great power and authority in a declaration. A declaration has the authority of law. Now, as we begin to apply this, remember this. A declaration can be used to acknowledge or to confirm the existence of specific facts. A declaration can profess or avow a position, a belief, or intent. A declaration can serve as a decree, a binding order, or a decision. A declaration can proclaim something loudly, clearly, or officially to the public. A declaration can define or set the parameters of a relationship or a concept. It can establish a new entity, a new policy, or a new legal right. A declaration can attest to the truth, authenticity, or the correctness of a statement or a document. It can announce an event or a decision officially, and a declaration can promulgate a law, a rule, or a regulation. So think about what a declaration can do, and then ask yourself this question. As we now know what a declaration can do and that it has the authority of law, what then are you acknowledging? What are you professing? What are you decreeing? What are you proclaiming? What are you defining? What are you establishing? What are you attesting? What are you announcing? And what are you promulgating by the words that you speak and the thoughts that you think? What are you affirming to be true over your life and over your future? Remember, there is great power and authority in a declaration. A declaration that you speak has the authority of law. So when you make a declaration, think about it. You are proclaiming something to be true. A declaration acts as a firm present tense assertion that establishes a new reality in your life. And by making a declaration, you are acknowledging, you are proclaiming, and you are defining a new reality to be taking place right now in your life. You know, as we look back through history, there have been a number of powerful declarations. Patrick Henry famously said, "Give me liberty or give me death." John Paul Jones said, "I have not yet begun to fight." Abraham Lincoln began 7 years ago as he began to proclaim the freedom of the slaves. Winston Churchill went on to say in World War II, "We shall fight on the beaches." Martin Luther King Jr. famously said, "I have a dream." My friend and mentor, Dr. John Maxwell, has continually said, "Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less." Now, every single one of these statements and countless others throughout history have served as defining moments in the lives of the individuals who spoke those words. What did they do? They declared a truth. They then lived by that truth, and their stories have been recorded in the annals of history. We remember those individuals in part because of the declaration they made to the world. Remember, a declaration is an affirmation. It is a statement of truth. And every single day, you and I are making declarations. The statements we make to ourselves, the statements that we make about ourselves, either build us up or they tear us down. The things that we say to ourselves and about ourselves are either moving us forward towards our destiny or they're holding us back from becoming a better version of ourselves. Now, affirmations, again, a declaration can serve as a powerful tool for rewriting or reinforcing our subconscious narrative. And depending on the truth we are speaking, we can either aid ourselves in the pursuit of personal growth, or the words we speak can hinder us and hold us back because they reinforce the limiting beliefs that prevent us from succeeding when we should be succeeding even more. So that begs the question, how do our declarations hinder our personal growth? Well, an affirmation, the words we say to ourselves, about ourselves, those declarations that we speak can serve as a powerful tool. They either rewrite or reinforce our subconscious narrative based upon what we're saying. If we're constantly speaking negatively, we're training our brain to focus on evidence of failure, of disappointment, and of lack. And this triggers the reticular activating system in our brain to ignore the wins, to discount the opportunities to succeed that show up every day because it focuses on all the reasons why we shouldn't or why we can't. So negative self-talk is strongly linked to anxiety, high stress levels, and an increased risk of depression. These negative self-talks, these words we say to ourselves and about ourselves, when they're negative, they sap the energy that you and I need to take action. They lead to procrastination and ultimately give us an overwhelming sense of helplessness. Negative self-talk can also damage our relationship because it causes us to withdraw from social situations, or we bring unnecessary tension and drama into them. Remember, there is great power and authority in a declaration. The words we speak to ourselves and about ourselves have the authority of law. So, how do we shift from negative self talk to positive self talk? How do we declare our independence? Well, first, we got to catch the thought. So, I want to challenge you pay attention to what you're saying to yourself, not only verbally, but the thoughts you're thinking and the thoughts you're focusing your attention on. Remember, what you focus on expands. So, step one to changing your declaration is to become very intentional about what you're thinking. Because don't forget, as you think, you say, you do, and you become. Now, secondly, you've got to reframe the narrative. You've got to actively replace I can't with phrases like I will figure it out or I am capable of learning. Because when we reframe the narrative, we start the process of retraining our brain to see the positive rather than ignoring it. You know, my friend Chris Robinson says, and you've heard me share this quote many times, it's not that you can't, but that you won't. And that choice is yours. Remember, and you hear me say it often, you get to choose your choices. And reframing the narrative, what you're saying to yourself, about yourself, and the thoughts you're thinking, that's one of those choices. Now, the third step in the process is this. I want you to treat yourself with the same kindness and the same encouragement that you would offer to a friend who's going through something similar. Now, self-care has become a term that today is often overused, but you do have to care for your own welfare and your own well-being. Understand this, you are worthy and deserving of the very same compassion that you would extend to a friend. So extend a little grace to yourself and forgive yourself for the mistakes of the past. Now, the fourth thing you need to do is this. You need to practice active gratitude. Here's what I want you to do. Focus on what you're doing right for at least 15 seconds. When you catch yourself doing something good, spend 15 seconds or more in that moment to celebrate the win. The very act of being grateful, which is a positive affirmation, is going to trigger the ventral striatum and the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. That's hard to say. That's the brain's reward centers. When you do that, it's going to boost serotonin and dopamine. That's the feel-good drugs that tell your reticular activating system to look for more of this. And in the process, it's going to rewire your brain to think more positive thoughts. Now remember, for many, many years, the American colonists declared their allegiance to Britain. This reinforced a sense of loyalty and patriotism and commitment to the crown. It shaped their view of the world around them until they came to the realization that the British government was no longer a protector, but a tyrant. And their rights as Englishmen were being systematically destroyed by the actions of the king. So this led the founding fathers to do something unique. They made a new declaration, a declaration of independence. So here's my question to you. What is the declaration of independence that you need to proclaim over your life? Now, the American colonists put their declaration on paper. They signed it and they proclaimed it to the world. So maybe, just maybe, you should consider writing out your own Declaration of Independence. And as you're considering doing that, and you're trying to figure out what does that look like, perhaps your Declaration of Independence should sound something like this. I am free from self-limiting beliefs. I am no longer subject to the tyrant, that inner critic inside my thoughts who's constantly telling me that I can't. I am now free from the fear of failure or the fear of success because I understand perfection is a myth. I choose this day to focus on improvement, not perfection. I have the right to my own talents and my own pursuits. The tyrant of imposter syndrome will no longer limit my belief in myself. I can and I will develop my talent, my skill, and my ability. I will persist until I succeed. And then I will repeat that process again and again, succeeding more and more. I declare myself to be free from the need of social approval. I declare myself to be free from the need of social pressure. I free myself from social media validation or the need to please other people. No longer will these things drive my decisions. I choose to create my own life based on my own standards, governed by my own values, and I will think for myself, and I will no longer be mindlessly following the crowd. I will choose to say no to the people and the causes that drain my energy and do not align with my own personal goals and objectives. I this day declare myself to be free from my past mistakes and failures. I will let go of the guilt I've held on to that I have allowed to define my existence, and I choose to forgive myself and let go of the past. I will move on from my childish ways. I will move on beyond self-centered thinking and past relationships that only served to limit my personal growth. I am no longer bound to my past, and I will move forward with boldness into the amazing future that awaits. I declare and I proclaim that I am free from toxic influences and bad habits. I this day sever ties with destructive patterns, with toxic people, and with unhealthy environments. I choose this day to remove the people from my life who drain my energy and only bring drama into my life. I declare this day freedom from procrastination, freedom from substances, and freedom from an unhealthy lifestyle. I affirm and I decree this day that I am free to act even without certainty rather than wait for a perfect condition. I will no longer be afraid of the unknown, for the unknown will make itself known to me. I will no longer feel failure because I understand failure is a stepping stone to success. I choose this day to get comfortable and stay comfortable being uncomfortable because I understand it is in the uncomfortable and it is in the unfamiliar that growth happens. And I will become a better version of who I am and what I do every single day. I choose this day to challenge the status quo, to change things for the better. This is what I believe, and this is what I will achieve. There is great power and authority in a declaration. Don't forget that. A declaration that you speak over yourself has the authority of law in your life. So that being said, let me leave you with this question. What are you declaring over your life? I'm Dr. John Terry, the Black Belt Leader. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day.